Hello friends, on December 24, 1971, Lansa Airlines Flight 508 took off from Lima, the capital of Peru, in South America. There were a total of 86 passengers on this aircraft, and it was headed toward the city of Pucallpa, flying over the Amazon rainforest. The first half hour of the journey was completely normal. The crew was serving breakfast to the passengers. The pilots were talking to each other about their families, and all the passengers were very happy because the next day was Christmas. Everyone was traveling to meet their families. But as soon as the aircraft began preparing to descend, dark clouds covered the sky. Suddenly, a terrifying storm appeared ahead. The pilots decided they wouldn't try to avoid the storm. They flew the plane straight into it. Within minutes, darkness surrounded them. Lightning started flashing. Because of the turbulence, the plane began shaking violently, so violently that passengers' luggage started falling out of the overhead compartments onto them. Panic spread among the passengers. Imagine this for almost 20 minutes. For 20 minutes straight, the situation remained the same. And then suddenly, at an altitude of 21,000 feet, lightning struck the plane. The lightning hit the right wing, causing it to catch fire. Just a few seconds later, the right wing broke off from the plane, and parts of the left wing also started tearing away. Only 15 minutes before landing in Pucallpa, at around 10,000 feet, the aircraft began breaking apart in midair. The air traffic controllers who were tracking the plane from the ground suddenly noticed that its dot disappeared from their radar. Some people hoped that maybe the plane had made an emergency landing, but soon it became clear that the aircraft had completely crashed. What followed was the largest search operation in the history of Peru. A few days later, when rescue workers reached the crash site deep in the Amazon jungle, they found pieces of wreckage scattered everywhere. Passengers' belongings were hanging from the trees. Suitcases had burst open midair, and Christmas gifts were dangling from branches as if someone had decorated Christmas trees. The search continued for days. No survivors were found, and it was assumed that all passengers on board had died. After all, who could survive after falling from a height of 10,000 feet? But this wasn't the truth. The whole world was still unaware. One passenger was still alive. Miles away from any human settlement, deep inside the dense Amazon rainforest, a 17-year-old girl was still breathing. Julianne Kopke. It was nothing short of a miracle. But the problem now was that she had fallen to the forest floor alone, injured and helpless. No one was coming to look for her because the rescue team had already stopped the search operation. Her family and everyone else assumed she was dead, just like the other passengers. Julianne had been traveling with her mother, Maria. They were headed to the Panguana Biological Research Station in the Amazon jungle. The station itself had been established by Julianne's parents, who were zoologists. The plan was for the whole family to celebrate Christmas together. Originally, they had planned to travel home a few days earlier, but because of Julianne's school prom and graduation party, she had to take a last-minute flight. Due to Christmas holidays, all reliable airlines were sold out. Their only remaining option was Lansa Airlines. Julianne's father had warned them many times not to travel with this airline. It had a terrible reputation. People even joked in Spanish. Lansa se lanza de panza, meaning Lansa falls flat on its belly. In the past few years, several of its planes had crashed. And this plane, Lansa's last one, was a Lockheed L-188 Electra turboprop. The plane had been designed to fly over deserts because its wings were not flexible and were tightly attached to the aircraft body. It couldn't handle turbulence well and had already been retired from service in the United States. The passengers had no idea that the plane wasn't supposed to fly over mountains. Yet this flight was routed directly over the Andes mountain range. When lightning struck, Julianne was sitting in seat 19F in the second-last row, a window seat. Her entire row tore away from the plane. Because she had fastened her seatbelt, she remained strapped to her seat as she fell from 10,000 feet. What happened next was one of the most unbelievable miracles in human history. Julianne fell through the sky strapped to her seat. Compared to the screams and noise of the plane, now there was only the roaring sound of wind. The seatbelt dug into her stomach with such force that it became hard to breathe. Below her was the dense Amazon jungle, so dense it looked like a field of broccoli, the ground invisible under the thick canopy. She lost consciousness mid-air. When she woke up, she found herself lying on the jungle floor. It was December 25th, Christmas morning. It had rained all night, covering her clothes in mud. She had been unconscious the entire night. She tried getting up several times, but every attempt made her faint again. After several tries, she finally managed to stay conscious and stand. Only then did she realize her collarbone was broken. Her knee was badly sprained. She had deep cuts on her right shoulder and left calf. One eye was swollen shut, and the other could barely see a thin line. Her eyesight was already weak, and now her glasses were gone. One sandal was missing. She had a concussion. But the question you must be wondering, how did she survive such a fall? There were 3 miraculous reasons. First, powerful updraft winds blowing upward due to the storm. These slowed her descent. Second, her row of seats spun rapidly like a helicopter rotor, further reducing her falling speed. Third, the dense Amazon canopy layers of thick leaves and vines acted like a cushion, breaking her fall before she hit the ground. And on top of everything, luck played a crucial role. The direction she fell, the trees she hit, the angle of her body, all these factors mattered. Even with these lucky breaks, surviving was almost impossible. Not a single other passenger made it out alive, but Julianne's real struggle had just begun. She was completely alone in the middle of the Amazon. She tried calling out for her mother, but there was no reply. The jungle echoed only with frogs, insects, and birds. Fortunately, the Amazon wasn't new to her. She wasn't an ordinary city girl. She had spent 3 years at the Panguana research station with her zoologist parents. She knew which animals were poisonous, which plants were dangerous, and how to think clearly during emergencies. After resting for a few hours, she was able to walk properly. The first thing she did was search for her mother and other passengers. She shouted, "Where are you, Mom?" But there was no answer. She occasionally heard the distant sound of rescue helicopters. But the jungle was so dense that seeing her from above was impossible. She realized she was completely on her own. If she wanted to survive, she had to find water and food. She used her presence of mind-licking water droplets collected on leaves to quench her thirst. Then she began searching for food. Many people assume dense rainforests are full of edible plants, but that's not true. The canopy blocks sunlight, so not much grows on the forest floor. Palm fruits grow high up 20 meters above. Climbing was risky. She found some mushrooms but suspected they were poisonous, so she avoided them. Then she found a box of Italian fruitcakes from the plane, but the rain had ruined them. She later found a bag of candies, just 30 pieces. She decided she might need them to survive for days, so she rationed them carefully. She still had her wristwatch, her grandmother's gift. But now she faced the biggest decision: which direction to walk. She wandered around the crash site for hours. Then she heard the faint dripping of water. Following the sound, she found a tiny trickle emerging from the soil. This was her first real hope. Her father had taught her, if you ever get lost in the jungle, find running water and follow it. A small trickle becomes a stream becomes a river, and a river eventually leads to human settlements. This was her only strategy, and so she followed the water. In the terrifying Amazon, home to 8-foot caimans, venomous snakes, spiders, and countless dangerous species, a 17-year-old girl walked alone. She didn't know where she was going, whether she would meet anyone, or how long she'd have to walk. She only knew one thing: follow the water, but following water wasn't easy. The water often flowed through difficult paths, fallen trees, dense bushes, slippery rocks. The jungle was so thick that sometimes she had to push through vegetation just to take a few steps. Evening approached. She looked at her watch. It was 6 p.m., and she now faced her next big challenge: surviving the night in the jungle. Gradually, the small stream of water turned into a larger stream, and this larger stream turned into a small river. But after so many days, her hunger had become absolutely unbearable. Whatever candies she had were all finished. She thought of eating the inside of the palm tree stems, but she had no knife or any sharp weapon to do so. Neither did she have anything to catch fish, nor any system to boil roots and eat them. Instead of food, she thought of just drinking river water to get by. Because of the minerals present in this water, she would feel full for a while, but after that, hunger would start again. Gradually, she was becoming very weak and hopeless. She didn't know how many more days she would be able to survive in the jungle this way. On the 6th day, Julianne hears the sound of a bird. And hearing this, she suddenly gets a burst of energy. Hearing this sound, she starts walking faster. Actually, this was the sound of a hoatzin bird, which she had heard before. She knew that this bird builds its nest near open water close to a large river. This meant that a large river was now very close. And as she walked a few more steps, she saw that her stream was now joining a river. But reaching the bank of this big river was very difficult because the mouth of the stream was blocked by pieces of wood and thick bushes, and it was impossible for Julianne to cross from here. Therefore, she turns back and goes around through the jungle to cross this barrier. This took several hours. But finally, she had reached a big river. This was a river about 30 feet wide. After walking in the jungle for so many days, Julianne saw a clear open sky for the first time. But there was still no human in sight for miles. She had been hearing the sound of rescue planes for a long time, but that sound was coming from very far away. But within half an hour to an hour, a plane comes very close. The plane starts passing directly over her. Julianne gets very excited. With great hope, she looks toward the plane and starts waving. She shouts, but nothing works. Unfortunately, the pilot sitting in the plane cannot see her, and the plane just keeps going. Julianne sits there waiting, hoping again that another plane might circle back, and she would shout looking at it again. But no other plane comes. And the sound of rescue planes that was heard in the distance now stops coming too. After a few hours pass, she never hears that sound again. Julianne understood that this meant the rescue search operation had now been closed. Once again, Julianne's courage begins to break. Until now, her target had been to somehow reach the river. But after reaching the river, she now realizes her loneliness. For thousands of kilometers, this jungle is uninhabited. No other human is coming to save her. She started feeling that her chances of staying alive here were zero. She was about to give up when she remembered something her father told her. Where there is a river, there will be people. Julianne motivates herself by remembering this, thinking that eventually she will reach people if she keeps walking along the river bank. So with this one last hope, she keeps moving forward. Days keep passing. But with the passing of days, her condition was also deteriorating. Flies had laid eggs in the wounds on her arm. Music. The maggots hatched, eating themselves deep into my flesh. Worms had started coming out of those eggs. Small maggots. These worms could only be removed from the wound with alcohol or kerosene gasoline, but Julianne had neither of these two things. She only had her silver ring. She opened this ring and tried to dig out the worms. But these worms had burrowed very deep into her skin. Now she started fearing that if this wound got infected, her arm might have to be amputated. Apart from this, she looked at the skin on her upper back, which was badly burnt. It had now started peeling off slowly, and blood was flowing from there too. She couldn't do anything about all these problems. So she did what was in her hands: keep moving along the riverbank. After some time, she realized that instead of walking slowly along the riverbank, why not jump into the river and swim? So she jumps into the river and keeps floating with the river's current. After floating in the river for hours, she sees the roof of a house, and after a while, she hears the sound of a chicken. But both these things were not true, friends. Actually, she was hallucinating. As it starts getting dark, she gets out of the river to take shelter. And then as soon as morning comes the next day, she jumps back into the river. She keeps doing this for the next few days, and doing this was not free of danger by any means. One day when she was lying on the riverbank, a large female alligator started moving toward her in an attacking position. Here, once again, Julianne's knowledge about the jungle came in handy. She knew that this type of alligator does not attack in the water. She went straight into the water and started floating with the flow again. After doing this repeatedly for several days, she had become even weaker due to the cold water. Food was still a big problem. She tried to catch frogs to eat, but by now she had become so weak that she couldn't even catch a frog. Walking along the riverbank, she later encountered many animals like deer, and this was not a good sign at all. Julianne knew that animals of this type are not found near human settlements. By the 10th day, she had almost completely lost hope. Julianne didn't have much left to keep herself motivated. Now she really felt that perhaps she wouldn't survive. Another whole day passes just floating in the river. The sun goes down. It starts getting dark. She gets out of the river and starts resting on the sandbank when she sees something. A large boat is parked in front of her. Was this another hallucination? She doesn't believe herself. She rubs her eyes and looks again. The boat was still visible. She rubs her eyes 3 times and looks. She saw the boat every time. Swimming a little more, she comes closer to the boat. She touches it. Only then does she believe that yes, this is truly a boat. Next to the boat, she sees a small path going up. Julianne gathers all the remaining strength in her body and starts climbing that path. There was a hut built up there. As soon as she reaches the hut and peeks inside, no one is visible. Actually, no human was present there. But inside the hut, there was definitely gasoline kept there. Julianne extracts gasoline with a small tube and pours it straight onto the wound on her arm to extract the maggots that were on her hand. Doing this causes her intensely sharp pain because, to escape the gasoline, the worms tried to burrow further inside the body. Slowly, the worms start coming out, and when she pulls them out one by one and starts counting, she finds out that there were 30 worms, 30 maggots embedded there. Julianne decides that she will sit inside this hut and wait for a human to come. Night falls. After night, morning comes, but no one comes there. She thinks again about trying to move further, but there was absolutely no strength left in her body. For the entire next day, she just sits there, hopeless and tired. But that evening, when it started getting dark, she heard some voices. Human voices. Julianne thought she might be hallucinating again, but then she saw 3 people coming out of the jungle. As soon as these people saw Julianne, they suddenly stepped back in fear. A white girl in torn clothes, whose eyes were swollen and who had so many wounds on her body. They thought she might be a demon. Friends, people in the Amazon jungle have many mythological stories, just like every culture has. They believe in the Yakamama, a very large anaconda called the Mother of Water, like a water goddess. These people had heard many stories about her, and seeing this girl in this condition here, they really thought she was the Yakamama. As soon as Julianne sees them, she gathers all her courage and tries to speak. She says in Spanish, "I am a girl who survived the Lansa plane crash. My name is Julianne." Hearing this, those people couldn't believe it. They told her that everyone had died in that plane crash. They had heard it on the news. If you are truly a survivor of that plane crash, it means you are the sole survivor who is left alive. Hearing this, Julianne's heart sinks. She realizes that this means her mother did not survive either. During this entire journey, she had hoped that her mother would also be alive, and this thought gave her motivation. But now, finally accepting this was very difficult for Julianne that her mother was no more. It was another huge miracle that Julianne saw these 3 men that evening. These people were actually going somewhere else and had decided to stop at this hut only because of the heavy rain. They give Julianne a shirt and pants to wear and farina, a type of toasted flour, to eat. Along with this, they clean her wounds and remove the worms from them too. In the meantime, 2 more people arrive there. The next day, all these people take Julianne to a village. When the village people see Julianne for the first time, they also get scared suddenly, because all the blood vessels in her eyes had burst, causing her eyes to turn completely red. In the village, her wounds are further cleaned and disinfected. From here, Julianne is taken to Urinecoca by plane, where doctors give her better treatment. A few days later, Julianne returns home safe and alive. In total, she fought death for 11 days, surviving alone in the dense jungles of the Amazon. This amazing story has shocked the whole world. Such an incredibly miraculous story. a 17-year-old girl who fell from a height of 10,000 feet into the middle of the Amazon jungle and stayed alive in the dangerous jungle for 11 days, surviving alone. Julianne came out of the Amazon jungle, but the jungle never came out of her. Later, she studies biology in college at the University of Kiel and becomes a famous zoologist. Just like her mother, she dedicates her entire life to conserving the Amazon jungles and the animals there. In the year 2000, after her father passed away, she becomes the director of the Panguana Research Station and starts looking after it, the same research station her parents had started. Today, in 2025, Julianne Koepke is a famous zoologist. She is 71 years old and is still alive. In 2010, she mentioned in an interview that for many years following this incident, she kept having nightmares at night. Scary dreams. She would repeatedly see the people who were sitting in the plane that day. One thought always haunted her. Why me? Why did only I survive and not the others? The answer perhaps lies in her courage and determination. Later, when the investigative team reached the crash site, they found friends that 14 other people had survived the crash. 14 other people were alive even after the plane crash but died waiting for rescue. But Julianne used her knowledge, her courage, and the things taught by her parents, implemented them, and made a way for herself. She did not give up until the very end. And perhaps that was the difference between her and everyone else. We should all take a lesson from this story. No matter how difficult the circumstances in our lives become, remember this story and think that difficulties as great as Julianne's will never come. If a 17-year-old girl can struggle so much to deal with all these troubles, then you can certainly deal with your troubles. If you like this video, please subscribe my channel.